today I'm going to show you how I work ferrule in the round doing English style and how to catch floats. So this is a little sample of the same stitch pattern for the upcoming pattern Flickers of Skadi, which is a cow works seamlessly in the round in a ferrule pattern. And then the ends, two ends, starting in the ending end, which will be further way down, are grafted together. So I've just done a little one here showing you to get you started. I knit English style, so I throw. I prefer English style as you can get an even texture when you knit. It is a little bit slower, especially when you're doing two colours, colour work or ferrule, but it does actually end up giving you a more even texture. So as you can see here, this of course has not been blocked, but all the stitches are looking pretty uniform and even. So even the ones here that have been, on the curve where the needles, or you split the stitches from the needles, that is one thing when you are knitting. You do want to change the cord where the split is every so often. So I generally split it every pattern repeat. Like for example, it's split here along this line, that's a pattern repeat, and then I'll probably split it here or here and a few rounds down. So that just helps keep an even texture along in between the stitches. As you get more practice, you can easily do that, but just to keep a nice evenness, and so no stitches are tighter or looser, so it will give an even look all the way around. So just a quick tip before we actually start knitting, I like to have my balls separate from each other. It just helps prevent the strands of the yarn from getting twisted. So often when I'm sitting down on the chair or on a couch, I will have one ball on one side of me, my knee, my body here, and then the other ball over there. So that just helps prevent you from getting in a tangled mess. So this does need floats to be caught. So generally, as a rule of thumb, you want to have every 5 stitches you catch a float. So with that, normally on the 5th stitch the float will be caught. A lot of the time though, I like to make it in the middle of a stitch pattern. So this one here has got 7 stitches across for the pattern, a little bit of the pattern repeat. So I will actually be catching it on the 4th stitch. So to do so, you have your main colour that you're working with across in the colour. You bring the contrasting colour and you just bring it up and over the colour you're working. So it's wrapping across. So you're going to be catching it, you knit, and then you drop the yarn back over. So as you can sort of see, it's actually catching and then twisting the yarn in. So I'll knit a few more stitches and then show you again, and that will just give you a good idea on how it should be looking. So see, give it a little gentle tug to help make it a little bit more even, and see how there it's actually caught. You can see that the stitch has got like a little wee bump here from the white, and it's actually caught. Looks kind of like a little purl stitch, but it isn't. It's just how the yarn has been caught at the back of the float. So then you go on to knit your other colour. So every so often you might want to just double check that your strands of yarn are flowing separately and not getting twisted. So you knit, and like I was doing before, this is the 4th, and I am going to knit again. The only thing is with this, see how this stitch, you can actually see here with this little bit of white, that has had the float caught from the previous round. So to prevent a lot of like the colours coming through, you don't want to be continuously catching the floats in the same spot. So sometimes you are going to position where you catch the floats in different spots. So with that already having a float caught there on this stitch, I would incline to unpick that stitch quickly and then catch the float here. You want to alternate where you catch the floats, because otherwise you are going to get like a raised texture on the background and it will come through and will be seen. So I'll knit this stitch and then knit. And you're not going to be seeing these floats. So with blocking, these stitches will settle down a little bit, and you will not see the wrong side of the floats catching through. So of course just continue to knit. And then I drop the yarn and then pick up the colour of the dominant yarn that I will be working, making sure not to get the yarn entangled, and then knit across. So just stopping to check to see where I've had the float from the previous round caught, and it can be seen here that it has been caught on this 4th stitch again. So I will be inclined to catch it here on this 3rd stitch. So you bring the colour from the back of the yarn up and over the strand, so it's going to be getting caught. You knit the stitch, bring that contrast colour round and behind back down. So why I'm bringing it around and behind is because you don't want to be getting it tangled in with your circular needles. So round and behind, and then knit until the end of the pattern, just as you normally would be knitting English. So as you can see, you can't see any of the floats poking through from the back, and this is at a looser gauge than normally Flickers is knit. It just adds to the more drapiness of the cowl, but that is also why you do want to be picking a non-superwash yarn, as when it's blocking, all the little fibres within the yarn sort of squish together and it locks the stitches and it gives a nice even image, and you won't see any of the caught floats poking through. So twist, and of course when you turn you do want to make sure the yarn are kept untangled. So you can see here this one is going to go under and this wants to go over there, so none of the yarns are getting twisted. So just like normal magic loop, you push the stitches through to get them on and the needle out, and so then this colour, so then the pattern is the blue. And when you're doing it through here, it's a little bit tricky how to keep even tension, so you don't want to be pulling too tight. Your instinct is to pull tighter here, but as you can sort of see here, it has been caught here in the float, so you don't want to pull too tight, otherwise you're going to get an uneven texture. That's one thing with knitting ferrule, you do want to be looser than what you would think. With being too tight, you generally want to aim naturally, instinctively you want to pull tighter so you get a more even tension, but that is actually not what you really want to do. You more want to have your floats kind of loose. You don't want them so loose that they're sagging, but you can see here I'm running just some up and down. They do move, but they also don't flip out. So the ideal is that you still want to be able to stretch your knitwear a little bit without them being constrictive. So that's realistically the tension you're wanting it to get to. So you knit just as we have been, and just quickly flicking back to see, so this stitch here has been caught on the 4th stitch again. See that little bump there? Kind of looks like a pearl, which is actually a float that has been caught. So I will be catching on this one. So yarn around and forward, so it's just coming from behind to the front of this needle here in my right hand. Knit as you normally would, yarn back and just make sure it doesn't get tangled around the circular needles, and then just continue to knit as you would until the pattern colour changes. So you want to give it a little gentle tug, not too tight, and that just prevents this little bit of the yarn popping through from the wrong side. So drop the blue yarn, now pick up the white, and just continue to knit as you would, and checking where you're going to catch the float. As you can see, the float has been caught here on the 4th stitch, so we're going to be catching it on the 3rd stitch. And so with that being caught on the 3rd stitch, these 4 stitches are just going to be knitted as normal, but that is alright because that is within the 5 stitches of the rule of having you want the floats to be caught. So don't be put off by the look that doing English is a bit slower than continental knitting, because once you actually get into it, you can get quite a good speed going with it. So I use often both hands to flick the yarn forward and back, and then I drop it the colour that I'm not going to be using majority of the time, and then picking up the colour I will be using mainly. So there is a little bit of dropping, but there is not dropping for every single stage. I use my index and thumb finger if it's yarn that is on the right, and then I actually use my whole left hand if it is yarn from the left. And then when I'm picking up this bit here, you are going to be using the dark colour in a minute. So I will just still have this main white colour here in my hand, then I use my index and thumb finger to just knit those 2 little stitches. And then swap and pull through like you do for magic loop. Not all rows of this stitch pattern actually have to have floats caught every single row, so I've gone on and knit a few rows ahead, and for this one here you don't actually have to catch any floats because this one is well within the stitch pattern of keeping it under 5 stitches. So it's 4 stitches and then you switch to the blue. So when I'm doing ones like this, I normally have the main colour working in my hand as I normally wrap, and then I pinch with my index and my thumb and then knit those 3 stitches with the contrast colour, drop that colour and still got the yarn wrapped, and then go on to knit these 3 here. At this stage now, because I will not be using the white until further down, I will drop the colour and then pick up the blue. So it can turn into quite a speedy little knit once you get some good rhythm going. So there's 3 and 4, so you don't have to. This is where I'm still going to be inclined to more just do the index and thumb and knit the 4 stitches with that. And sometimes I drop it to push the needle through and then quickly pick it up. And then I will just be using the wrapped yarn, how I highly tension my yarn with English knitting, to knit. So it can actually turn into quite a speedy knit, and of course you do have to drop your yarns when you turn it around to work the other side like you do with magic loop. I hope that's given you the confidence to have a go at doing some Fair Isle stranded knitting. It is really not that hard. You do not have to learn a different technique to do continental or hold one in each hand. You can still comfortably continue to do it English style. And catching floats, just a little bit of practice, but once you get into the hang of it, you'll be away, and you can actually be quite surprised how speedy it can turn out to be. A lot of the time it is actually quite fun to knit because your mind has got enough relaxation from it just being stockinette stitch, but enough to keep you focused and your brain working a bit with having to change the colours. But especially with this pattern, it becomes a very fun cow to quickly knit and becomes quite an addictive project to be working on. So of course, if you liked this video, give it a thumbs up and make sure you push subscribe, as more of these tutorials will be coming out at random over the next few weeks on this channel. Okay.